Long ago, when the forests were young and the world was still taking shape, a curious thing you might notice is that monkeys didn't always live in the trees. They lived on the ground, just like many other creatures. They ran through the tall grasses, played games of chase, and only climbed low branches to find a quick bite to eat. Life was simple, yes, but it was far from safe. The forest floor was a dangerous place, a world ruled by predators. The lion, with his immense strength and fearsome roar, was the undisputed king, and he ruled through fear. The hyena, with its unsettling laugh, always seemed to find joy in the suffering of others. And the leopard, a creature of deadly beauty, hunted with silent, merciless precision. For the small and nimble monkeys, every day was a struggle for survival. They were clever, no doubt about it, and quick on their feet, but their size made them easy targets. Despite this constant threat, the monkeys were a joyful bunch. They had a special talent for finding happiness in small things. They loved to play, to swing from the low-hanging vines, and to gather sweet fruits from the bushes. Their laughter was a common sound, echoing through the undergrowth like a cheerful melody. But even with all their joy, a deep-seated longing for safety rested in their hearts. They dreamed of a world without fear, a place where their children could play freely, without constantly looking over their shoulders. They yearned for a sanctuary. Then, one year, a terrible drought fell upon the land. The sun beat down relentlessly, and the once lush forest began to wither. Rivers shrank to muddy trickles, and the vibrant green leaves turned a brittle brown. Food and water became incredibly scarce, and a tense, desperate energy filled the air. The predators, driven by hunger, grew even more aggressive. The lion and the leopard, once rivals from a distance, now clashed openly over the last remaining prey. The monkeys found themselves caught in the middle, forced to dart and hide, trying to avoid becoming casualties in a war they couldn't possibly win. It was during this desperate time that the oldest monkey, a wise elder whose fur had turned a soft, silvery gray with age, called a meeting. He gathered all the monkey families under the shade of a great, ancient baobab tree. He spoke with a calm, steady voice that cut through their fear. He talked about the ever-present dangers on the ground, the constant running and hiding. Then, he lifted his gaze upward. "Look," he said, his voice ringing with a new idea. "The forest has more than just a floor. The trees are not just for finding food. They are for finding life. They are a path to safety. We must learn to live among them, to make them our home, or we will not survive this." The younger monkeys were hesitant. They looked up at the towering trees, their branches swaying high above in the wind. The canopy seemed like a different world, vast and intimidating. The thought of leaping between those high branches was terrifying. A single misstep, a fall, could mean a broken bone or worse. But the elder was patient. He explained that their natural agility, the very cleverness that helped them survive on the ground, could be their greatest asset in the canopy. The forest, he assured them, would be their teacher. All they needed was the courage to take that first leap. Slowly, cautiously, the monkeys began to explore this new, vertical world. It started with small climbs, then boulder leaps. They stumbled, they slipped, but they learned. They discovered how to use their tails for balance, how to judge distances with a flick of an eye. They learned the rhythm of the swaying branches, moving with the wind instead of fighting it. And up there, they found a paradise they never knew existed. There were fruits and nuts that no ground dweller could reach, sweet and untouched. They found hollows in ancient trunks and sturdy nests of woven leaves that provided perfect shelter from the rain and the prying eyes of predators below. As the wind whispered through the leaves, a new feeling washed over them, a sense of freedom. Down on the forest floor, the predators quickly noticed the change. The lion would prowl beneath the canopy, his frustrated roars echoing upwards, able to reach the monkeys who now chattered down at him from their safe perches. The leopard, a master climber, tried to follow them. He would spring into the lower branches, claws extended, but the monkeys were too fast, too agile. They would simply leap away, disappearing into the dense foliage, their movements a blur. Even the hyena, who had once laughed at their every stumble, could only stare up in frustrated silence. The high canopy was a fortress, and the monkeys were its masters. As seasons came and went, the monkeys didn't just survive in the trees, they thrived. They grew stronger, more confident. Their bodies adapted to a life of climbing and swinging. They developed a complex system of calls to signal everything from the location of a ripe fruit tree to the approach of a snake. They learned to work together to share food and to protect one another. The trees were no longer just a refuge, they had become a home. The canopy was their community, a place where they could live with joy, security, and a deep sense of belonging. Over generations, this new way of life became deeply ingrained in their culture. It was more than just a survival strategy, it was who they were. Mothers instinctively taught their babies how to grip, how to climb, and how to make their first tentative leaps. The elders, the keepers of memory, would gather the young ones and tell them stories. They spoke of the old days on the ground, of the fear and the struggle, not to scare them, but to teach them the value of what they had gained. The monkey's laughter, once a brave sound in the face of danger, now became a pure expression of freedom, a sound of intelligence and unity that cascaded down from the treetops. The other animals in the forest watched this transformation with a sense of wonder. The cleverness of the monkeys became a legend. Even the mighty lion, in his own way, developed a grudging respect for the small creatures who had outsmarted him not with strength, but with ingenuity. The forest itself seemed to find a new balance. It became a world of layers: the ground and the canopy, each with its own rules, its own inhabitants, and its own lessons to teach. And that is why the monkeys never returned to a life on the ground. The trees had become their sanctuary, their kingdom. The branches carried their joy, and the leaves whispered their stories. The forest remembered them not as the weak creatures who fled from danger, but as the brilliant survivors who used their minds, their courage, and their community to rise above their challenges. So from that day to this, when you look up and see monkeys swinging gracefully through the canopy feasting on fruit high above the world and hear their laughter carried on the wind, you're witnessing the legacy of that ancient choice. Their safety in the treetops is a living testament to a timeless lesson learned long ago, that with cleverness, courage, and by working together, even the smallest among us can rise above the mightiest of dangers. Their story is a powerful reminder that sometimes, the greatest freedom is found not by standing your ground, but by having the wisdom to look up and find a new way to live. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales from the wild. See you next time.